All right, welcome back, everyone. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed your coffee, managed to have a little bit of a chat, a little bit of network going on over there. All right, so before we start, Joe? All right, so before we start, let's have a little bit of another contribution for everyone that's here today. Once again, please whip out your phones. I will be switching on the QR code for a few seconds over here, just that you can log in once again. All right, so kindly join in and have a look at the question that we have up on the board at the moment. So the question that we're asking from you now is, who benefits from the proposal to extend the contribution of workers beyond retirement age on a voluntary basis, which was clarified by Kevin earlier, and what is the level of benefit? All right, you will notice that you've got quite a few options over there with grades. Okay, you can choose to skip certain answers, but please don't forget to submit once you are ready. And once I see everyone's put down their phone, I'll remove the QR code again. All right, so we'll give you a minute or so. All right, we seem to be very much in time and on schedule. All right, so at least at the moment, it seems that the general consensus is on par between all of the above, but with a specific focus on society at large, which seems to be taking the lead. Although it does also seem that it's quite close between most of you believing that all of them, that all society will be benefiting, but it seems like society at large is taking the lead. So as opposed to just the worker or the employer, or absolutely no one, it seems that there were still a couple of contributions over there as well. All right, once again, these results will be made public through a publication a little bit later on as well. I'd also like to remind you that there is the function and the option for you to put your questions in at the bottom as well. All right, on any time that we are through it, you'll also notice that if you follow the application while we're going through the presentation, the slides that are being on the board for these, all right, will also pop up on your devices as well. All right, so coming up next, we do have a little bit of a surprise for you. Seeing that Anton's been very relaxed over the past couple of weeks and didn't really have much to do, all right, he decided to come up with something else. All right, so I'm not really going to say much about this, but I'll just leave it to the video to explain what there is.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to meet you. I am Brother Edward from De La Salle College. I am 100 years old, just in August. And I feel that to stop at the moment teaching in my subjects, it's very wrong. I am healthy enough. When I say I'm healthy enough, thank God that I'm still healthy. Thank God that I can meet the students and they want me. So it is my pleasure to continue my work as long as I am capable to do it. In your case, the people of a certain age are on the increase. Sometimes I go out and see these people sitting on benches, talking, doing nothing, and I say, how come? These people who have experience, a lot of experience in their work, can they continue beyond that famous age of 65? Of course. If these people want to, if these people are still strong enough, if these people would like to show their experience to the newcomers, why not? The employers should be pleased that they have this chance to have experts in their work. At the same time, the newcomers must thank these older people who are, I'm sure, that they are ready to give their experience to younger people so that the work they are doing improves. It becomes better, and I can't see anyone, these employers you are, I can't see you saying no. And therefore, from both sides, you are gaining. The older people are gaining if they wish, if they want to, and if they are capable to, and the newcomers are also gaining experience through the older people. Imagine, I stopped 40 years ago when I was 60. Imagine the work I have been doing so far. All that is lost and gone. And probably students will say, brother, why didn't you continue? Your health is so good. Just to finish my few words, I hope that you will understand that your work is going to improve. This work is going to improve through the help of the older people. And the older people, I'm sure, they will have something to do. They will be pleased to meet younger people and have something to offer. And I'm sure it's not a question of reading on books. This is practice. The practice is much better than the knowledge from anywhere else. So, please, employees, continue to think about it. I'm sure that you will do it. I'm sure that you will do it. Because it's good for both of you. For you, first of all, for the older people, and for younger people who will experience from the older people. And I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Anything I can do later on, not talk theory, but at the same time, anytime I may visit perhaps one of your places and say, this is done in Malta, so good and so fine. Thank you very much.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I just have to say that Brother Edward was one of the first people that I ever met when I set foot on this island about 36 years ago. He hasn't changed that much, to be honest with you. The voice still sounds exactly the same, and I think he is testament basically to what we're actually talking about today. I mean, I wish we could expect everyone. I wish I could keep on going like that. But no, inspirational and absolutely impressive, to be honest with you. Hey, that's it. Fantastic. All right, so moving on now, we are going to proceed to our first round of 3-minute interventions, okay, where each of our speakers will have 3 minutes to share their insights. I'm sure you've noticed that up until now, I have been entrusted with enforcing these time limits, and like I am looking at you, I am also being looked at as well by others over here to ensure that we stay within these time limits. So you will receive a signal when you've got roughly 30 seconds left. You have the timer on the board as well in order to remind you how much time you have left, please. So please, let's try to avoid me interrupting, all right? Let's try to wind up when you see that there's 30 seconds left. Just try to wind up your contributions, please. I'd rather not play the bad guy throughout the next few sections of today's event. All right, so I would like to start with our first speaker, Ms. Diane Vella-Muscat, the Director General of the Department for Industrial and Employment Relations. So, Ms. Diane Vella-Muscat.
So, of course, I'm going to recount some experiences that we encounter on a daily basis at DIR. First and foremost, I don't know if you noticed that many are calling this valuable resource as the silver tsunami. Silvera, of course, I leave it to your imagination why, but indeed a tsunami, because it's causing some wave of some sort. In my experience from the IR, I have to say that three important fundamental things have to be present in order to treasure and have a win-win situation for both employees and employers. First and foremost, you have to have a sound legal basis. I know I don't want to sound odd and bored, but it has to be there. Now in Malta, we already have the employment equality regulations, which is enshrined in our employment law, but we do occasionally have the question, can I make a candidate ineligible because of age? So, although we don't like those kind of questions, but we do get them every now and then. The second point is institutional knowledge. I mean, persons which have gained so much experience. As a good practice, we have seen many companies also having them work as mentors for other younger generation that together with the institutional knowledge and the technological gains which the younger generation bring aboard, they actually make a very good recipe for the future and for the company itself. And last but not least, of course, labor conditions. We have to divide these persons between the need and the want, in the sense that many of them, as brother said, would like to want, they are enthusiastic, would like to continue. Many, we find that they would like to continue, but on a reduced working hours. So that's a thing to consider. But there are others also who still need to continue working because of family commitments. So just to recapitulate, and I'm going to be earlier, I'm going to be not just on time, but earlier, legal basis, not losing the institutional knowledge, and having sound labor conditions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Diane. All right. I would just like to mention that Brother Edward was following online. All right, he heard the applause that we gave him and the comments that we said, and he would like to thank all of you for what we did. So thank you very much, Brother Edward. All right, so moving on next to Grazio Barbara, the Director General of Social Security.
Good morning, everyone. In accordance with the Article of 64B of the Social Security Act, the Pension Strategy Group is responsible for the tabling of a report, including the necessary workings required for the assessment of the pension system, current and projected. That is, in terms of its adequacy, sustainability, and social solidarity. Put differently, the report presents an update on the policies and changes experienced in the preceding 5 years, as well as outlines and seeks to address the current or expected issues related to fiscal sustainability, adequate income replacement, and the achieving of a fair balance between contributions paid and the pensions benefit received. The Maltese statutory retirement age is being gradually increased in order to reflect the longer life expectancies observed at both local and global levels, with the latest developments being increasing the retirement ages to 64 and 65. As per the 2007 reform, the contributory period required to earn a full pension and or to retire early has increased from 35 years to 40 years for those born between 1962 and 1968. Furthermore, as per the 2016 reform, the contributory period required to earn a full pension and or to early retirement will increase from 40 years to 41 years for those born between 1969 and 1975. In reference to the upcoming 2025 Pension Strategy Review Report, the Pension Strategy Group is currently in the process of assessing the areas of both, but not limited to, pension, income tax, the evolution of social security contributions, savings, wealth, private pension take-up, post-assessment update of the deferral system, retirement standard livings, child credit policy, the evolution of the maximum pensionable parameters, amongst others. The deferral rate system has not only aided from the individual level income adequacy perspective, but also from an employer standpoint. For ease of reference, the referral system operates by allowing individuals to increase their respective pension by actuarially positive percentage linked to the number of years that the individual decides to defer their pension.
Mr. Barbari, you've got 20 seconds left. Can you please start wrapping up?
Statistically, the total number of approximately 8,000 individuals have benefited from this scheme since its inception in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we would like to hand the floor over to Mr. Kevin Vella, the Director General of the Economic Policy Department from the Ministry of Finance and Employment.
Thank you, and thanks for all the contributions so far. I'll try to be brief. The aging population and the aging of our workforce is a given, a reality, and it's a reality which we need to face together. We are not the first. As a country, there are other countries which are facing the same problem and have been facing the same problem. What comes to mind is, for example, Japan. If you look at Japan, it's an aging population. It has been for quite some time, and I think it's a country we can learn from, because in reality, coupled with the aging of the population in Japan, one typically associates what we call the lost decade, or now more than a decade. Because in actual fact, an aging population is typically also associated with low growth. But low growth doesn't have to mean low productivity. And what we're really after in terms of economic development shouldn't be growth, but more in terms of productivity. Growth obviously is important, particularly coming from a government perspective, in terms of from a fiscal perspective, definitely, but I don't want to focus particularly on that. An aging population and an aging workforce also has implications on the amount of savings. Typically, an aging population saves less, and that is also detrimental to not just growth, but also could be detrimental on productivity, because the more we save, the more we can invest. And in the absence of those savings, we have to actively reach out for savings from abroad. In terms of economic policy, we're talking about foreign direct investment there. So these are important considerations from an economic point of view, which have to be obviously taken into account. Most of the time when we think of an aging population, we focus a lot on the labor market and the aging of labor and its impact on productivity. I will not repeat what has already been said, but what should we do? Because that's the reality. What should we do? And what I would like to emphasize here is not just the focus on the employee, but also the focus on both government and also the employer. Innovation is clearly important to address the challenges of an aging population, and in this respect, there are various sectors which should be involved. Not just, we focus typically on the skills of the employee, but obviously there needs to be more investments, including by the employer and also by government in terms of infrastructure, technology, artificial intelligence. These are all the things which would compensate and ensure that the growth challenge doesn't become a productivity challenge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vella. Okay, moving on now, we'd like to hand the floor over to Mr. Keith Bartolo, the Principal of the Institute for the Public Services at the Office of the Prime Minister. Mr. Keith Bartolo.
Hello, everyone. So basically just a bit of data. I'm not going to bore you with data. The average age of people working within the public service, not the public administration, the public service is 43.9. So we are in the middle bracket as we saw before. So basically, I would like to take my 3 minutes on a bit of a different dimension. And I would like to talk about the responsibility that we as employers have towards those who would love or who decide to retire and to lead a different lifestyle outside the work environment. I think after all those years of service, we as employers have the duty to take care and see that when they do that transition, they are leading what we say a healthy lifestyle. Before going in a bit of detail about that area, we have to keep in mind as well that our so-called aging population is currently carrying, I wouldn't call them burdens, I would call them different challenges nowadays. If you just take a look around within your organization, you will immediately realize that a lot of your elders are either taking care of their grandchildren or else of their aging or elder parents. So we have to appreciate that these people are carrying a lot of extra responsibility that before, even though there is the Club 316, childcare centers, whatever, active aging, but it is a fact that we need to keep in mind that our elder workforce are taking care of our grandkids, I take myself as an example, and also their parents. So that's a fact that we have to keep in mind as employers.
Bartolo, 30 seconds left.
Yes. As for that thing of taking care of our employees, it is important that retirement can carry a lot of physical, psychological, emotional, financial implications. So there are programs, there are professionals who can help us prepare these people as long as 2 years before planning to retire to have a smooth transition into a world which can be rewarding as much as the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartolo. Okay, now moving on to our final speaker for the first round of interventions, I'd like to welcome Dr. Luke Fiorini, who's the Director and Senior Lecturer for the Center for Labour Studies.
Morning, thank you. A lot of you valued health, and I'd like to focus a bit on that. I mean, as we get older, we're all well aware that our bodies change, mentally and physically, and in order for people who are older to keep working, we need to be aware of these changes and sometimes adapt our workplaces to them. This might involve changing the environment, work tasks, organizational systems, many factors. But at the same time, sometimes companies, employers might not know how to do this. And this can be the difference between someone dropping out of a workplace or remaining there. So I think it needs to be given importance. And this might involve changing little things, things like lighting, furniture, considering mental workload, factors like this. And keep in mind as well that older workers are more liable to get injured. They take longer to recover. And therefore, we need good rehabilitation services to help these people to return to work, because it can be the difference between them staying in work or not. So I think Malta would benefit from having more holistic occupational health services. I think it's an area we lack a little bit in Malta. And these should ideally help employers to also adapt their workplaces to older persons' needs. I think in Malta we don't even have many specialists in the field, sort of therapists, etc. There isn't even a specialty register for them, so you're not going to find people specialize in occupational health matters. And the profession of health and safety in Malta is more or less unregulated. So if you'd like people who are capable of helping employers to adapt their workplace, I think we need to regulate this profession better. We need people of a higher caliber, ideally maybe with a degree, who can help employers to buy the right equipment, make the right changes, not they spend money for nothing. I think educational courses at university, at other entities should incorporate these factors. We do this at the Center for Labour Studies, for example, in health and safety, human resources. And finally, maybe it would be useful if there are guidebooks and materials for employers to help them understand how the body changes as we get older, what changes can be made, and hopefully promote those who wish to continue working into older age. It will allow them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiorani, and thank you for helping us stay ahead of the schedule. All right, so I would like to thank everyone from that first round of intervention for the contributions. And now I would like to move on to Mr. Philip Kirkop, the founder president of Fondazione Nanniet Malta. So can everybody join me in welcoming Mr. Philip Kirkop?
Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, for this invitation and opportunity to sound our preoccupations, our positiveness, our challenges. One thing is I didn't follow the scanning and whatever because it's a challenge of new technology, first of all. I think Brother Edward said it all. He couldn't say it better than he did. Because aging is not a disease. Aging is a condition in a phase of one's life. So we have newborn babies who are born, unfortunately, with a condition. We have youths who use mental health services, and they have their own problems and conditions and health problems. We have adults who have health problems. And then when we reach the retirement age, pensionable age, it's a condition that old age brings certain things. One thing I can assure you, my friends, that up to some years ago, when we used to talk with elderly people, the first thing that comes up was health, hospitals, medicines, pills, and doctors, whatever. In our age, during these 11 years that I have founded the Grandparents Malta Foundation. We have also created a Grandparents Day, which never existed in Malta 10 years ago. We managed to pass it through Parliament with a unanimous vote. And we are coordinating. I'm seeing Cynthia Formosa here. We are very appreciative for her support to the Grandparents Association because we are giving line dancing for free, we are giving halls for free, and we have 5 centers in the local councils in Mosta and various other places. Yesterday, I invited the Mosta mayor to address a group of 60 grandparents who meet every Tuesday. I think I have 10 minutes or what? Because I've been told I have 10 minutes. I don't know why, but perhaps it's a preferential treatment for the elderly. Anyway, and I proposed that local councils have the opportunity and authority to introduce bylaws. Bylaws, for instance, to address the issue of banking hours. Elderly people are held in rain and sun, especially after the COVID and during the COVID period, okay? And for long hours to be served at the banks, at hospitals, at post offices, at local clinics, health clinics. And so I think that we should introduce the culture of appreciation for elderly people who have served in the war, who have served back in years. I remember at the central bank I spent 37 years. We didn't have computers in 1970 when I joined. We had Lago Marzini. Well, I don't know anybody from the banking sector. And today, we had to challenge also during our workforce to adapt to computers and mobiles. And so this is one of the challenges that we face. You asked us to what is the first thing to come to mind in the beginning. I didn't find the word dignity anywhere. And that is my ultimate and fundamental issue that we have. Elderly people should be given the due dignity they deserve. If they are given the dignity, to hell with hospitalization, with mental health issues. I mean, it's not the overall remedy, but it releases and it reduces health problems. We have our association is focusing on combating solitude and abandonment, and it's hard to say, heartbreaking to say, as some of you mentioned here, Mr. Keith Bartolo said that grandparents mind grandchildren, especially when they are young. If you go around schools, doors of the schools, you find elderly people, grandparents, picking up and taking their grandchildren to school. And I think we need to secure the self-esteem of the elderly people. Some of the people, at least my experience, we have around 2,500 registered members throughout these 11 years of existence. And we come across widows, especially, who depended on their husband, and they were isolated for self-imposition for 1.5 years, some of them. And they say, listen, it's thankfully that we met you, not me, the organization, that you made us come out from home, from our isolation. And this is very important. And I think tangible appreciation from the government. This medal reflects the appreciation for Ġieħi Repubblika, not to me. I dedicated it to the grandparents and elderly parents who are doing a great job to the community. And please, employers and everybody, use our talents, use our skills, use us to help you plan for the workforce to plan their retirement. I've been invited at the university for courses which I think the Employers Association or the university holds for people who are going on retirement. Now, the challenges. Modern technologies. We need, why should we, to apply for a driving license or to renew a driving license, the only means is online? Come on. I am 72 years old. I've been at 37 years at the central bank, and I had early retirement at the age of 55 to work in the voluntary sector, and I'm still here. But still, notwithstanding that I was a banker, I still find it difficult to cope with technologies, with AI, with ATMs and things like that. Let alone people, elderly people who have little or negligible educational period, coping with pills, for instance. The pills are changing colors and sizes every day. How can you, a person who has some tremor in his hand, like sometimes I have, I can't hold the pills in my hand, and I have to see, if not my wife helping me to see that these pills have changed brands, have changed colors. What the hell? I mean, come on. These are, and I remind you, and I always, as both MPs, when I speak to them publicly in Parliament, we have public seduti hearings in the Parliament for grandparents specifically. And I tell the MPs, you are all young. Thank you for what you are paving the way for yourself with interest. But remember, you will become old, and you will become grandparents one day. So whatever you are paving the way today, it's paving it for yourself and for everybody in the future. But now we need decent elderly homes. We need more free pills for elderly people. We need to do away with the means
Sorry
test.
to do this,
Come
Mr.
on.
Kirkhope. Can you start winding down?
Means test, who doesn't have 23,000 at the age of 72 in the bank? And they asked me, do you have a car? I said, yes. Do you have a second car? Yes. So you don't have chance for a means test, to pass means test. So the roles of grandparents keeps changing since the war years, since my age and today. We are also a working force in the black market without getting paid, without paying VAT, without paying income tax, but sometimes even our pensions are being taxed. And I would like if you give me some time, because I've prepared for a longer period. These bylaws, for
Mr.
instance...
Kirkhope, I'll give you 30 seconds, please.
Okay. Banking hours, priority lanes. Or, for instance, they start at 8:30 till 10 for the elderly persons, giving them preference. They can't stay in long queues. They can't stay in long queues for toilets. They can't stay standing up in buses. Let's get this culture which we used to have. When we used to see a policeman, everybody flies away because they are afraid of a policeman. Now we have community police. It's a positive thing. But the elderly persons must have also the insurance issue, for instance. We pay
Mr.
double.
Kirkhope, I'm sorry,
double
but I'm going to have to
insurance.
cut you short right now.
I have a lot to say.
Sorry
but
about that.
anyway.
All right, so thank you very much, Mr. Kirkhope, for that inspirational and eye-opening contribution over there. I live in a lot of these situations that you were mentioning with my in-laws at the moment, and so I found that particularly interesting from a personal perspective as well, so thank you very much for that. All right, so moving on now, we are going to move on to the second round of interventions, and I would just like to remind the contributors over here that there is a 3-minute time limit. All right, I will be playing the bad guy once again, all right, and coming in and letting you know when you've got about 30 seconds left before we move forward to the next speaker. So I would like to start over here with Mr. Joseph Bugeja, the Secretary General from the General Workers Union. Mr. Joseph Bugeja, your contribution, please.
Thank you. And I would like, first of all, thank Malta Employers Association for this excellent conference and the opportunity to speak there too. Members of Parliament, dear colleagues and friends, we stand at the crossroads of change. Malta's labour market faces one of its greatest challenges yet, adapting to an aging population. Our country, like many others across Europe, is experiencing a demographic shift where people are living longer and healthier lives. While this is a positive reflection of our healthcare and overall quality of life, it also brings about complex challenges that we, as trade unions, together with employers and government, must address. The situation is further compounded by Malta's demographic trajectory, which is characterized by the lowest fertility rate in the EU. From a trade union perspective, we need to embrace this change by advocating for policies that reflect the realities of an aging workforce, while ensuring that workers' rights remain protected, safeguarded, and improved. First and foremost, we believe flexible working arrangements are key. Older workers often wish to continue contributing to the workforce, but perhaps not in the traditional 40-hour a week. We must push for flexible working conditions, such as reduced hours, teleworking options, and job-sharing schemes. These are not only necessary, but will encourage older employees to remain active contributors to our economy. Their experience and knowledge are invaluable, and the labour market must make room for them in a more adaptable roles. Secondly, lifelong learning, upskilling, reskilling, and continuous career development cannot be mere slogans. They must become a standard. As technology and industries evolve, so too must our workforce, regardless of age. We need to push for continuous skills and competences development, particularly for older workers, ensuring they are not left behind in a fast-changing economy. Training programs must be designed to upskill workers at every stage of their career, allowing them to adapt to new roles and responsibilities. This not only improves employability, but keeps the Maltese economy competitive. As our workforce ages, we face a growing challenge in bridging the digital gap. Many older workers possess invaluable experience and wisdom, yet often lack the digital skills required in today's rapidly evolving work environment. It is essential that we invest in training and upskilling programs that empower these employees, ensuring they remain productive and valued contributors.
20 seconds left.
By addressing this gap, we not only support their continuous participation in the workforce, but also foster a more inclusive economy that leverages the full potential of every generation. During the run-up of the last general election, the Workers' Union, together with the Chamber of Commerce, proposed the principle of flexi-employment.
Mr. Bajaj,
We
I'm gonna have to
argued
ask you to
that
wind
the
up.
existing approach to those who have full 40-year contribution to reach the age of 61 to be replaced by flexi-employment approach. Finally, we must
Thank you very
address
much,
the
Mr.
need
Bajaj.
for the interaction between the different generations, as older generations continue to work longer alongside the younger generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm feeling really bad now. Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Bajaj. Okay, so moving on now to Mr. Adrian J. Gallia, the Director General of the Insurance Association Malta. Mr. Gallia.
Thank you. The insurance sector faces multiple challenges in its role as a major investor, as an employer of choice, and as a service provider. As workforces change, becoming smaller and older, the sector is faced with an opportunity of redesigning age-related products and services to meet a demand which was probably until now untapped and overlooked. The obvious solutions that come to mind are life, health, accident-related insurance products which are considered to complement the safety net that most governments, including ours, provide, even when budgets are already stretched as they are in coping with such outlays. One of the obvious products that comes to mind is employers' liability, intended at providing cover to employers in the event of liability arising from employees injuring themselves while employed. Although this type of insurance cover is available locally, employers are not mandated to procure insurance cover even when riskier jobs are at stake. Take-up of employers' liability is indeed very limited, even where premium generated has risen from 5.4 to 6.4 million between 2022 and 2023. Life and accident insurance cover have been in existence for several decades. They are intended at providing financial compensation to the next of kin in the event of death of the insured, and compensation in the case of an accident. Peace of mind if the insured person needs to stay away from work for an extended period of time until recovery is complete. In certain countries, such as Austria, accident insurance is mandatory for employers, but cover is limited to accidents or diseases which are directly linked to their employment. And so this cover, in a way, supersedes any employer's liability cover mentioned earlier. As workers become older and harder to replace, companies would find it beneficial to focus more on energies towards the health of their employees. Healthy employees tend to be more productive and happier, apart from being more cost-effective. An aging work population will also create an opportunity for better retirement products. Our recommendation for auto-enrollment with a voluntary opt-out is one key solution which potentially helps to address a poverty trap upon retirement. As more and more people retain their jobs well into old age, they would become more discerning with the demands, the standard of living expectations will continue to evolve, and the spending patterns will also change. Although such insurance policies and/or workplace pensions are considered as a cost to employers, yet those employers who provide such solutions set them apart from the rest that do not.
After 20 seconds left.
In circumstances such as ours, where human resources are in short supply, such insurance products could be considered as an opportunity at retaining your valued employees for the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gallia. Okay, now, moving on, I would like to welcome to the floor Mr. Arthur Muscat, the Honorary President of the Malta Employers Association.
Right. I'm very glad here today to discover a fantastic awareness of the problems, but also, and more important, of the potential that exists in respect of retirees and pensioners to keep on contributing. It is also very good to hear that employers are becoming very much aware of their responsibilities, which responsibilities actually go beyond retirement. And this awareness is fantastic. And we have to appreciate that an abrupt, total work termination can be extremely destabilizing on an individual. And unfortunately, there are still a lot of prospective retirees who are not fully aware of what the prospects are and how difficult it can be, and this person might be unable to cope with this retirement. A wrongly handled retirement will impact immediately on a person's health, and this is very, very, very unfortunate. Unfortunately, yes, there is still a lot of what I call misguided ignorance about what retirement, is what retirement implies. And obviously, not everybody is capable to handle this situation. If I go back a few years, quite a few actually, the mid-80s, when I got an inspiration in my line of work to introduce a pre-retirement course for the employees of the company I worked for. And in this pre-retirement course, there were very extremely relevant topics. How to apply for a pension. A psychologist would come along to explain what's going to happen once you are out of active work. And the course was a success. What triggered me to introduce the course was a very brief encounter with an ex-employee who was handling in a very bad way his retirement. And he complained to me that he couldn't even stay at home because the wife, who had successfully nurtured a 5-child family, would not have him around. She just couldn't accept that he's going to be around the whole day. And he said, so I end up moving out, and as Brother Edward mentioned, sitting on a bench and, sort of just idling about. So, these are the real problems of particular people who can't handle the situation. The introduction of such courses in companies will go a long way. But today I realize that the awareness is there to intervene in this way.
Mr. Muscat, can I ask you to wind up, please?
It's extremely important. I just want to stress that work, in truth, is dignity. But more than dignity, and employees, if possible, should continue working on a reduced level, but more than dignity, work actually gives us identity. We know most people, not necessarily through their name. You'd get the name. But he works, he's from that company. So, let's not underestimate. And I will stress again the potential, which has been very well explained here, that these people of a certain age have to continue to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we'd like to welcome to the floor Mr. Perit David Schwira, Chairman from the MCESD.
Thank you very much. Thank you, MEA, for organizing this and for inviting me. Really a pleasure to discuss a very topical subject, even in the bigger scheme of things. I want to focus on the subject matter, which is adapting the labor market to the aging population. We are certainly living in a modern civilization. Demographics in the world are changing. Malta is not the only country that's changing. We form part of Europe, but also form part of the rest of the planet. We see what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Americas, what's happening in the East, and what's happening in the South. And I think, whilst this is a wave, we certainly need to, as a country, look at this transformation as an opportunity for change. We tend to define age as young. affect us. Yes, okay, it affects us, and the reality is that we should be motivated by a transition. Given that all of us, this country and Europe, is being motivated by what has been written by Mario Draghi in transforming the whole of our continent into a competitive one, then one cannot certainly ignore the transition into a more competitive country, a more competitive continent, without looking at the contribution and the integration and the respect for the elderly generation. Certainly, our ability to focus on our productivity and to support our economy in this transition through the various ways already mentioned this morning is absolutely essential. I also need to focus on consumption. We talk about skills, we talk about education, we talk about production, but we also talk about consumption. Consumption will certainly provide an opportunity for the transition of this economy, which we also need to look at, because that will change too. It will also remove discrimination, it will also improve respect, and therefore the integration of all ages of our society into our economy. An economy that needs to transform. We talk about this a lot at MCSD. We'll talk a lot about this when we're having our coffees. The need to transform our economy into an economy that provides better value for our country, better value for our country, for our inhabitants, including all age groups. The transformation of our economy needs to ensure that everybody contributing to it, including the elderly, show up at their very best, ultimately in the pursuit of everybody's happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now for the final contributor for our second round of interventions, I'd like to welcome to the floor Mr. Kenneth D'Elia, the CEO of Hospice Malta. Mr. D'Elia.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to address you today on a topic that's increasingly relevant to both our society, economy, and labor market. Hospice's core services include ensuring the best quality of life at end of life, living with dignity, as mentioned already, and educate and train professionals in palliative care. Through our services to around 1,500 families, with around 70% of them being elderly, we enable patients to remain within their own environment as much as possible and reducing the burden from our acute hospitals. As the organization continues to grow, we too are faced with the challenges of recruitment, especially since we have a more specialized area. We have a staff complement of around 61 employees with a median age of 44 years, with 12 employees over 60 working between 25 to 40 hours per week. Is this always a challenge or an opportunity? One cannot but know that employees of a certain age come with various advantages, some of which already mentioned, including experience and skills, commitment to work, possibility to train younger employees, consistency and interest in one's work, possibly require less training, and sometimes we also note the soft skills, including communication and charisma with our patients. Some good practices that we have implemented. One, the possibility of flexible working arrangements, including part-time roles, flexible hours, remote working, as well as consultancy within our education department. Two, lifelong learning and upskilling, investment in training programs, mentorship, shadowing placements locally and abroad. Three, intergenerational collaboration, which could be a tricky one unless you have the right environment supporting it. And four, volunteering. With around 200 volunteers, the majority of them over 60 years of age, we acknowledge the importance of this tremendous resource, working flexibly and making meaningful contributions while maintaining the balance they seek. Concluding with one specific example, about 3 years ago, we interviewed a 62-year-old for a post required in administration. We noticed that this was a bit below his capabilities, but we were unsure in view of the person's age. Again, the importance of the right mindset. The candidate scored well on a number of attributes: responsibility, commitment, people skills, positive attitude, and a strong work ethic. And we decided to go for part-time employment, which suited both the organization and the employee. And allowed also for a good work-life balance in spite of our initial doubts.
Got about 30 seconds left.
3 years later, not only I do not regret this decision, but the employee proved to be a real asset to the organization, fitting perfectly within a team of various age groups and happily providing a crucial service to our patients. For us, 4 main keywords to keep in mind: right structure and environment and culture, right strategies, right mindset, flexibility and training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you once again to all the contributors for the second round of interventions. All right, now coming up next, I would like to welcome to the floor Mr. David Spiteri-Gingell, who was the responsible expert for the implementation of the 2017 to 2019 Retirement and Financial Capability Strategy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. David Spiteri-Gingell.
Thank you very much. I would like to show one graph so that we focus on our minds of who we refer to when we speak of elderly people of Malta. The data that we currently use either in the pensions reform or other instances is Eurostat data, which overinflates because it assumes that migrants in Malta will move into the first, second, third generation, which is not the case. Most, a good majority of migrants in Malta leave Malta by the second year. So if you strip away those migrants, we go back, and that is what the graph shows there, we go back to what the actual aging population of Malta will be. This is the projections that the Reform Commission had carried out in 2004, which I had shared. And as you can see, this is actually more positive than what it would be under current circumstances, because we had assumed longevity to be 1.4 when it's actually 1.1. So when you extrapolate that, you will see that the population of Malta is dying. You will see that the elderly population will peak by 2035, and it will start to die. So we are looking, and I'm not being racist here, this is pure data, and analyzing that data. So when we put the discourse of the elderly, all right, we have to make sure, we must know what we are talking about. In terms of exploiting or optimizing the elderly, one of the things that myself, the General Workers Union, and the Chamber, one of the things that we propose is a flexi retirement pathway, which unfortunately, as implemented, is a guillotine, because you either retire at 61 and you're excluded from the labor market, or you retire up to your statutory retirement age, and this has implications. Why? Because good, talented people who either because they provide informed care or because of health issues, all right, are opting out of the market, but they cannot in any form or shape contribute to that market because they are excluded to do so. So the people around this table, I urge them to come with us, all right, so that we can propel what is a negative change related to elderly people and related to enterprise. Because we have human capital that is being excluded from the labor market, whilst we are importing importing human capital from wherever it comes. The second strategic review, which I had also chaired, had made the recommendation of removing the statutory retirement age. Okay, and we had called for a national conference to start the discourse in this regard. The third strategic review, which I had not shared, but I was a prime actor in it, which was the 2015, also made that request. I think the time has come that employers and employee and representatives of employees come together to make this discourse. It may not be applicable for all sectors of the economy, but it can be applicable for a number, like knowledge-based industries. One of the things we introduced in the 2015 strategic review was a top-up mechanism to encourage people to work up to their statutory, work to 65 years of age. Initially, it was actuarially negative. There were reforms last year. Was my friend Gretchen said that it's actually positive. I dispute that. If you do the maths, retiring at 61 and retiring compared to your longevity at the actuarial rates provided, which compound to 29% over the 4 years, it's not worth your while. Okay, the sum is more or less the same. We have argued for a long, long time that the government should introduce aggressive actuarial rates. And when I mean aggressive actuarial rates, not just for people up to 65, but for people up to 75, and if necessary more. Regretfully, our government, the government, both sides actually, because I was involved under both administrations, has not taken our advice. Coming to financial literacy, and I will stop here. I articulated the first two national strategies, and I had set up also the implementing arm for government, which is called JAMA. One of the major issues and one of the strategic issues we had identified is financial literacy for elderly people. Apart from what has been mentioned here in terms of retirement planning and all of that stuff, there are some serious concerns when it comes to elderly people. We know, although I have not come across data, and by the time I left JAMA, we had started but not completed research, and I'm not sure whether it has been completed. There is an iceberg of financial elderly abuse. And when I mean an iceberg, I mean an iceberg, okay? We had informal sessions with the banks, we had informal sessions with quite a number of stakeholders, and the form of financial elderly abuse that takes place, all right, is disquieting. I know that Cynthia with JAMA have initiated a program at local councils, okay, to start building knowledge on money management and things like managing or giving power of attorney and all of that stuff. But in my opinion, and I have argued this quite loudly, we need more robust mechanisms, including legislation and statutory instruments, including institutional mechanisms, to make sure that we have the right instruments. And this includes also the role of the banks in applying protective mechanisms against financial abuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, so thank you very much, Mr. Spitangel. And right now, we would like to move on to our third round of interventions. Okay, so I'm just gonna, one final reminder over here. You've got 3 minutes, okay? I will bring up at about 30 to 20 seconds that you've got that much time left. Let's try to please stick to the time limits as much as possible. So first up, we've got Mr. Tonio Mifsud Bonnici, who is head of HR at Simmons, Parsons and Chisk. Mr. Mifsud Bonnici.
Thank you, MEA. I will try not to repeat points that are already mentioned, but for the first time, the composition of the workforce, even in companies like Parsons, okay, includes 5 generations. Some people might say 6, because baby boomers can be baby boomers 1 and baby boomers 2. So, all with varying backgrounds and level of experience, or trying to overcome challenges and achieving business goals. Collaboration between the 5 generations is required on the workplace, but we cannot deny it is a complex behavior. Are our leaders ready and aware how to lead multi-generational teams? Multiple generations tend to generate richer and innovative ideas across organizations, and the decisions being taken tend to be sounder. However, the confrontational aspect of the different viewpoints can be complicated and harder to manage, and organizations that hire and promote the same cohort of thinkers are capping their potential, and so more delicate to manage. There are 4 ways organizations can be impacted by age diversity. Productivity, I will not go into the details who is productive or not. The research shows that there are different viewpoints on this. There can be increased revenue. An age-diverse market will bring the best match with an age-diverse workforce, since a variety of backgrounds brings unique approaches to problem-solving, happy customers, stronger revenue, positive effect on the bottom line, and employee engagement. Innovation. Experience across generations provides a kaleidoscope of perspectives, as each generation has something innovative to contribute. Valuable experience and fresh ideas, plus technological skills. Employee retention. If managed well, increased moments of learning and mentorship provides employees with better growth and development. On this, I want to make a point. Yesterday, there was the program of MEA, in which there was a point about the AI and the way forward in industries. You can't, when you speak about reskilling, can you put all these generations into one session together? I'm sure that people coming out from university, people coming out from our schools, all right, know how to manage an AI much better than I can. So can you put me in the same class as they can
30
be?
seconds left.
We need to think about these things. Age discrimination, when doing interviews, recruiting, these are important. Career paths, we need to ensure that obviously that people remain in employment. There are career paths, specific clear paths for people coming in the workplace. Young people expect these career paths, and we need to ensure that the mentorship programs are important, flexible arrangements, accommodating workplaces. These are all things that companies like Fossil are on their agenda to ensure that our workers can gradually and have planned transitions into retirement that can benefit both the workers, the economy in general, and our organization.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masood Manichi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, up next we've got Mr. Michael Patros, Administrative Secretary from the Archdiocese of Malta.
Thank you. As the MEA President said in her introduction, the aging population issue could be both a challenge and an opportunity for the labour market. And we will encounter bottlenecks in the future years, and we'll have to see how to address them appropriately. The EU in general, we see, is not keeping up with the increasing number of people in need of care. And our analysts envisage that we will face a crisis within 30 years. We will face dilemmas on growing old with dignity, and long-term care will offer challenges like never before. Population aging is, as we see it, the defining trend of our time. More and more people will find themselves in need, and therefore the demand for long-term care is increasing, and public spending, we have to ensure, keeps up with the pace of this demand. Malta already has the legislative framework ensuring that everyone is paid the minimum wage and that there are appropriate work-life balance in legislation. However, we feel that more effective enforcement and measures are needed to curtail abuse. I think that we also need to invest in long-term care systems and also to reform them, so that they are also future-proof. And we must prioritize a person-centered approach in the provision of long-term care that ensures quality care and dignified care work, regardless of one's financial status. The Archdiocese of Malta has invested in hospice and palliative care, as we have heard Mr. Delia speak earlier before, through St. Michael's Hospice, and also there are other services which we believe could also be offered by the state. We must focus on community-based care, moving away from institutionalized care. But for this to happen, we have to compensate appropriately persons who look after elderly residents, even through fiscal incentives if necessary. We must also look after the physical and mental well-being of care professionals. Some workers are not valued or trained appropriately. Thankfully, in Malta, we do not have the urban and rural divide as we find in other EU countries, nor do we have the inequalities found in other EU countries. However, I feel that we need to foster circular migration through exchange programs so that our workforce is trained better for the future. What we define as quality today will not be the same standard for someone retiring in 10, 20, and 30 years' time.
30 seconds left.
I'm concluding. I have to quote Pope Francis, who is often misquoted, who says that we have to always strive for an integral human development approach. With the average age of the population rising, we have to consider keeping older workers in the labor market to counterbalance the effects of this demographic shift. This shift can have far-reaching and wide-ranging impacts on the labor market, and if the dependency ratio will continue to rise, so will the number of economically inactive persons. So we have to train our workforce to become more conversant with the use of technology and AI, and we have to ensure that physical and mental capabilities and capacities are addressed too. I also, one final point, want to remind everyone about the robotization substituting workers and the effect this will have on the economy, and also the need to have structures to cater for the higher education levels that older Maltese will have in the future compared to the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward now, we've got Mr. Ray De Battista, the Chief People and Culture Officer at BOV. Mr. De Battista.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We at BOV employ 2,300 people with a median age of 38 years, 60% of whom are female. And interestingly enough, we have 600 plus retirees with whom we are trying to reach out because all they want and all they need is the dignity, and I'm quoting Mr. Kirkhope, because they want nothing back but to share their experiences with fellow employees within the organization. When it comes to moving to the challenges that we have as an organization, as a country as well, these are compounded when an organization like us offers EVR opportunities, early retirement opportunities. People want them, but at the same time, we know that we're losing out on institutional knowledge, and we're trying hard not to lose that. At the same time, although we're focusing today on the aging workforce, we also need to take into consideration the younger generation, not the younger. Because nowadays we're living in a society where people are becoming more and more impatient. They want to grow fast. They need to have their careers moving on fast. And so our challenge is to create a balance between creating opportunities for people to leave if they want, and I stress on voluntary, and also giving the opportunities for people at the younger generation to grow because they will leave. So that is one of the major issues that we're facing. The other major issue is when it comes to reskilling, more than upskilling. Upskilling is something that we do normally, but when it comes to reskilling, especially when it comes to the digitalization programs that we have, the introduction of AI, we're looking into, and I think that we can contribute more as an organization also to the island when it comes to preparing our people for the changes that we need to go through as a country when it comes to AI and all other things, that the changes in methodologies, because this is a fear factor when it comes to people of a certain age when it comes to such changes. So if I were to compound the major areas that we need to focus on moving on would be attention not to lose tacit knowledge, a change in mindset from now, especially for the 40-year-olds upwards, reskilling opportunities, care when it comes to well-being opportunities, because so many times we focus on the economic, but there are many other important factors when it comes to people's lives.
Can you please start winding up?
Yes, last but not least, let's not lose the joy of living. So the word voluntary to me is very important. We need to give opportunities for people either to remain in an organization, to leave, and to whatever they like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward now, we've got Jackie Attard Montalto, Chief Human Resources Officer at Atlas Insurance.
Thank you very much. I very much relate to what our colleague from BOV was just saying about the demographics of the workforce. I think flexibility I don't need to get into, but I think one of the options is not to have the person occupying the same position because younger people want to occupy those positions, but we've been very successful. We have someone who's been in retirement for 10 years, and every time he's about to end, someone else says, keep him on another year, we'll put him on this project, you know? So we really have situations where people are giving the wealth of knowledge they've obtained. I think there's attitude as well from both ends. You know, I think there's the attitude of people who are aging to stay young, to stay learning, to stay training. And I think that is very important. And the attitude of the employer to keep supporting where support is needed, because I think we need to be aware of that. Looking at training and diversity, it's becoming really evident to me that age is a huge component of our diversity in Malta. Not only, for instance, non-local workforce. And I think looking at two aspects, to have continuous learning and also physical and mental well-being throughout the period. It's not about saying, oh, I'm 50 now, I need to start retraining, or I need to get fit because I need to be strong in my old age. I think it's really about learning to do this from a young age, so you never lose that habit, and we continue to make sure that well into, let's face it, at 65, people are not so old anymore. I'm getting close to that age, so I'd like to think that. Obviously, the digital skills is a big one, and we need maybe help from authorities to have some kind of digital screening and programs where, you know, it's quite difficult to find these resources. I think another aspect is, sort of, I touched on it, older people giving way, especially in family businesses. For instance, it's quite important to have the older people conscious of giving way and giving space to the new ideas of the younger ones. I think it's very important from an ESG perspective for companies. This is becoming very big on our agenda, and it's really part of our the social aspect. And I think, you know, we mentioned well-being and good health. As regards assistance from authorities, I want to make an appeal as well as help and support from experts, because we're not experts in aging. Also, not to create a very difficult legislative framework which will tie our hands. Let's be able to work with people and change circumstances and leave things flexible so we create win-win situations for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on now, we've got Ms. Josette Kutaya over here from the Health and Safety Coordinator at De La Rue. Ms. Kutaya.
Hello. I'd like to add on a bit to what Dr. Ferini has earlier mentioned. And I think as a society, we have to put health and safety on top of our agenda and aim towards having zero tolerance for accidents at the workplace. If we reduce accidents now to the workforce now, it will be a benefit to our aging population earlier on. And as one can see from accidents, usually these relate to musculoskeletal issues, meaning issues with bones, joints, and muscles. And many occasions, these take longer to heal, and they are not an easy fix. So it's important that we focus a lot on having a management system incorporated in our way of looking at health and safety. If we have a look at the activities which are what we consider a bit high risk, such as operators which work in which could result in falling from heights, repetitive tasks, heavy lifting, okay? All those activities will lead to prolonged injuries. So we need to focus our resources into minimizing these as much as possible. And in order to do this, as Dr. Ferini correctly pointed out, we need to have competent person helping us in this industry to reduce as much as possible the risks, okay? And help people to change also their behaviors. We need our workforce to be more aware of their health, meaning they need to protect their bodies, to help them endure further activities, meaning they need to protect their hearing capacity, they need to protect their vision, okay? And they need to protect also their flexibility. I believe that while we should give more campaigns and education, all right, guiding people through references from perhaps, overseas guidelines, we can improve our health and safety within our workforce. Another important point, please, is staying active in and out of work. Okay, it's very, very important to encourage people to find the balance, to stay active outside of work, all right, meaning carrying out some activities, sports, so that they remain healthy and can prolong, okay, their activities throughout their lives. One last point, please, very, very important. We need to give more guidance to substance misuse. Okay, we know that as we age, okay, bad habits, what we say bad habits like smoking and drinking, these normally tend to increase. So we need to guide more people to minimize this and have more discipline in our social life.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we'd like to welcome to the floor Mr. Martin Vella, who is the Chief Officer of Business Processes and ICT at Panta.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for what has been a very interesting morning. Although I agree that we should encourage our elderly employees to stay on in the working environment for as long as they are comfortable doing so, I think we need to keep in mind, very importantly, that there are industries and there are industries, and the requirements in the industries vary. I come from the construction industry. In our environment, we find difficulty in convincing people to stay on because of the nature of our work, and we also find difficulty from a moral perspective. Are we doing the right thing? So I think that needs to be kept firmly in mind when we strategize and when we make recommendations. Despite this dilemmatic situation, clearly the requirement the economy has is a serious one. We've all seemed to have the same opinion about this and the urgency. So there are things that I think that we can consider doing, and they include, amongst all the very, very recommendations that have been made this morning, I think we should increase awareness with this group of people, awareness in the sense of how it would benefit them to stay on in employment. And I refer to the fiscal benefits that are available to them, and also to the health perspective of how people can stay healthier if they do remain active, both physically and mentally. I think a good idea, and this is something we are doing at Panta, is to consider setting up academies in which people of a certain age go from a productive role into one of tuition, to address the fact that the historical transfer of knowledge which used to happen, which doesn't happen anymore, takes a formal approach of knowledge transfer. This would allow people to learn, the younger ones and the older ones to stay in the employment environment without being exposed to the environment which the work environment presents. From what we've seen, if I have interpreted the statistics well, foreign workers seem to stay in the working labor market in Malta for a short period of time. And maybe we can consider some form of strategy to extend that. I think beneficial also, in general, would be to consider a less bureaucratic and a less stressful working environment. The working environment in administrative roles has become very intense. Jackie mentioned DSG. I will add to that CBAM. And the list is endless. So I think providing a less stressful working environment would benefit all. That's all from my end, and I thank everyone once again. Thank you so much.
Very much, Mr. Vella. All right, and for the final speaker for our third round of interventions, I'd like to welcome to the floor Mr. Daniel Borge, the CEO for the Gozo Business Chamber.
I would like to thank MEA for organizing this event, which I believe is a very good follow-up from last year's event organized in the Maltese Parliament, where we discussed Malta's low birth rate and the impact this has on various sectors. As an organization which is based in Gozo, I'm obviously going to discuss this from an island region perspective. As already highlighted last year, Gozo faces specific challenges. Between 2017 and 2022, the population in Gozo increased by 5,618 more inhabitants, or a growth rate of 16.2% when compared to 2017. It is interesting to note how over that 6-year period, while in all the regions in Malta, the highest percentage increases were observed in the age cohorts of 30 to 39 and 40 to 49 years, Gozo experienced the highest percentage increase in the 30 to 39 cohort, however, followed by the 70 to 79 age group. Moreover, in Gozo, there was a decline in the 10 to 19 age group and the lowest increase in the 50 to 59 age cohort when compared to other regions. Obviously, this points out to an increasingly aging population in our island region. Here, we are trying to answer the questions on how we can adapt our labor market to an aging population. However, this is neither an easy question and for surely one which merits a multifaceted answer. In our case, I also believe that this merits an answer which also draws on some regional insights. While from the concept now distributed and the research presented, it is evident from a mental health perspective, it would be beneficial for elderly people to remain involved in the workplace, it is important that this issue is analyzed carefully. How are we going to increase the appetite of an increasingly aging population to remain involved in the workforce? And I believe that this calls for specific incentives which would enable them to remain actively involved while also be in a position to reap the benefits of which they have worked in all their life. Another relevant question is how an aging population is going to remain relevant to the ever-changing demands within the workplace and with different skill set requirements.
20 seconds left.
Yes. However, more than that, I believe that the ambience in the workplace needs to be favorable to elderly people. Pope Francis speaks of intergenerational dialogue. We need to welcome them both from a physical and a social perspective. Last note, and concluding with that, we need to see the sectors. Gozo is, for example, dependent extremely on construction and tourism. And as mentioned by Martin Vella, these are very physically demanding growth. So we need how the people involved in these sectors, how are they going to remain involved? Or perhaps how they can transition to other sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borg. So moving forward now, I would like to welcome to the floor Professor Marvin Formosa, an expert in gerontology and dementia studies for the Faculty for Social Wellbeing. Professor
Thank
Formosa.
you. Thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for Maya, and congratulations for organizing this roundtable. Of course, being a gerontologist, such a conference is music to our ears. I remember in the 90s, in the late 90s, we had a similar roundtable on retirement. So basically, I remember older people there, even the trade unions, were very adamant that people have a right to retirement. And then David was very much involved in pension groups and meetings in the early 2000s, where older persons expected a right to have an adequate pension. Eventually, older persons started to actually demand a right to that trade unions and the government actually helps them to perhaps continue working it a little bit over old age or mandatory retirement age. But then we had the Honorary Ajus Galia was there, had the cabinet meeting at St. Vincent de Paul, and one member for the public actually raised his hand and said, why are you not giving me the right to work? Because we know that the right to work is enshrined in the Human Declaration of Human Rights. But unfortunately, once you reach a certain age, 65 in the case of Malta, this right is taken away from you. So this right becomes obsolete with age. So I think that in the coming years, both trade unions, the government, especially the Parliamentary Secretary for Active Aging and also the Minister for the Economy, are going to experience a lot of pressure from aging people, aging persons, older workers to continue working for further years. We all know that Malta has the lowest rate in the European Union of women aged 50 plus who are in the aging workforce. I believe we are in the penultimate post, Romania being the last. The reason is that very few families above the age of 50 had actually a house loan due to the aggressive housing policies up until the mid-90s. So essentially, these people do have some spending power, and also culturally, the women may not feel comfortable in working. But this is going to change very fast. There's going to be a watershed moment. These things do not occur, gradually. The good news is that Malta has the longest healthy lifespan in the whole European Union. Basically, people in Malta live healthily for 67 years at birth, which is very, very high. For example, in Denmark, people only live healthy up to 54 years. And you may tell me how is this possible? It is possible because many women, for example, in Malta, tend to be invisible, tend to remain working in the household sphere, whilst abroad, people tend to go into more voluntary services. So that's the good news. The bad news, in a sense, is that as medical doctors and as Dr. Fiorini would certainly assert, the body, it is what it is. So essentially, basically for gerontologists, for example, we start to age. Well, in Maltese we say it better, nsiru anziani, okay, at 50 years. Of course, I have stopped saying this on the radio and on the public and social media because, of course, of the barrage of protest. But essentially, it's true. Once we reach 50 years of age, our body starts to decline slowly, and not everybody declines at the same rate. So being in the midst of employers association here, if we want that older persons continue working longer, I'm not the expert here, but I feel humbly that there's no choice because as we know that the age force is shrinking, and if you open any social media, you hear a lot of comments on foreigners coming to Malta and working here, etc. So it's not really an option that people exit the labor market, labor force earlier. In fact, in Malta, our average exit age from the labor market is quite low, quite low compared to other countries. So basically, we need to ensure that our workplaces are age-friendly. This is, of course, it's a topic, it's a buzzword, sorry, age-friendly, but we need to ensure that our workplaces are amenable to older persons. And like I said, older persons, not necessarily a 90-year-old, but even a 52-year-old, 54-year-old, you might have a 50-year-old with some eyesight problems. It's very common. I see Fabian nodding. So these are all aspects. As a gerontologist, we could also turn this conference the other way around. This is titled Adapting Our Labor Market to an Aging Population. From a gerontological point of view, we would say empowering older workers, to meet the needs of a changing labor market. So employers and the labor market are truly subjects, and I do understand from where you come from, but at the same time, older persons also need to be, older workers also need to be made a subject. In fact, the active aging policy strategy, first published in 2014, and then the second edition in 2023, does mention a lot living longer working lives. And of course, it's a very complex subject. It's not just putting more light at the place of work and you're going to make the place more age-friendly. And it is also multidisciplinary, and that is why there are so many people around this table, because I don't think any one of us has all the expertise, all the solutions, all the ideas. It needs to be a team effort. There are gender implications, age implications, cultural implications, the type of work as well, whether you work in insurance or whether you work in construction or even sales or driving a car or in taxi. Of course, has an impact on how we have to transform one's employment offices environment to accommodate. And so, of course, we need to look forward. We need to look forward. Basically, looking forward means that we have to ensure that older workers, aging workers, mature workers, and we play a lot around with words as gerontologists, not to be ageist, do continue having a place at the workforce. At the same time, obviously, there also need to be built a culture of respect, a culture of empathy, a culture of understanding. The word well-being was mentioned a lot since I was here. And of course, you cannot have a good aging workforce without having a culture of well-being. Of course, I do understand from Mr. De Battista said about the young people, they want to have a fast career progression, if I understood you right. It's not really my area, but I think I can empathize with it. And that is why, and I shall close with this, there's a need also for intergenerational approach to this perspective. So we cannot speak of the rights, of the needs of older persons without empathizing how this is going to impact the younger generation, and vice versa. Sometimes we hear about political declarations on younger workers, perhaps without mentioning or thinking how this will impact middle-aged or older workers. So there needs to be also an intergenerational approach, perspective, that ideally, of course, in practice it may be a tough nut to crack, but ideally that one takes in consideration the rights, the perspectives, the attitudes, the anticipations, the perspectives of different of people from different age groups. Thank you very much. Thank you again for this conference, and hopefully there will be some tangible follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Formosa. Now from Professor Formosa, we move on to Dr. Patrick Barbara, consultant and psychologist. Dr. Barbara.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Coincidentally, this is the eve of the Mental Health Day, and the main theme of the Mental Health Day is the mental health in the workplace. So this is very, very good, obviously, timing. I decided to focus on retirement and extending working age. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, so I am a clinician, I'm a doctor. And the main two questions are these: how do psychological factors influence retirement age, and what are the mental health impacts of extending the work life? I want to convey my message straight away at the onset, and what is important is basically not how long we work, but how we work and the quality of the environment we work in. The quality of the environment is not just the chairs or the lights, it is very important, but also the gratitude and the social interactions. Something that was mentioned, most of my talk will be about things that every one of you mentioned, is that retirement is a major life event, major life transition. To be fair, on the life change index scale, is the 10th most important life event in our life. It's very much linked and very much tied with our identity. One of our longest roles in life is about work. We start thinking about work from the age we are actually students. And retirement is the first incident where our next transition is not linked to gainful employment. Research is mixed about this, whether retirement is positive or negative, mostly because it is so complex and the human being is so complex. So there are positive outcomes, like, for example, an increased opportunity for leisure time and reduced stress. But there are also lots of negative outcomes, like, for example, social isolation, as we were saying before, and loss of a sense of subjective loss of purpose. Another important psychological aspect that I would like to focus on is the voluntary versus involuntary sense of retirement. Basically, we're talking about control. So the more in control you are of your retirement, the better the outcome. as I was saying, work is a core identity, and when we lose a core part of our identity, we tend to have issues with depression, we have issues with low self-esteem, and also anxiety, and these are the people you usually see in our clinics after retirement age. Prolonging or delaying retirement obviously helps in this, with the proviso that at some point in time a person actually has to retire. So that loss might be just a postponement. What is key in this situation is mental or psychological flexibility. So we need to train from a young age to actually have a flexible mindset, a flexibility psychologically, and not linking our own existence, our own identity just to work, and to have other things supporting us psychologically. Moving on to the mental health challenges of extending retirement age. I start with the challenges, then I focus a little bit on the positives as well. The major challenges are obviously, as we go on, is work stress, is an element of decline related to our mental capabilities, especially when the job is less motivating or less stimulating, and age-related issues, as you were saying, mostly physical, that in certain situations they counteract the wish to actually continue working. So basically, that's most of it. I want to focus on a little bit on work stress and control, because we mentioned stress. We mention stress a lot. We talk about stress a lot. My understanding of stress basically focuses on these two main theoretical approaches. Basically, we are usually stressed when we feel the demands are very high and we have very low control on a situation, and these are complementary, and when the efforts we do are very high and the rewards are very low. So basically, if on the workplace we are feeling these situations, we will feel stressed out. These tie very well with the concept of burnout, and the end stage of burnout is actually disengagement. So if we are looking forward for retirement, it means that maybe we are too stressed, and maybe there is this issue about basically what we're talking about. The benefits, when I say cognitive benefits, it means cognition is the mental actions of acquiring knowledge and understanding using thought, experience, and the senses. So it is being engaged with your environment, using our brain to actually engage to our environment. And it was shown that engaging in meaningful actions and meaningful work actually helps to keep our cognitive functions at par. And actually there is research that says that keeping mentally active, cognitively active, it protects against a number of dementias, especially Alzheimer's dementia. So this is something that it is a positive, and this is the major positive thing about staying in the workforce as much as possible, or obviously doing other things that are meaningful in your life. Just two examples, so that I'm not an expert, to be fair, in work dynamics, but these two countries surface quite often in research in relation to satisfaction and mental health, with relation to retirement. Sweden, they provide flexibility in their way of retirement, and actually it shows that mental well-being is improved, is maintained, and it reduces anxiety, whilst the Netherlands offer very flexible, a smooth transition in their retirement, and this as well decreases depression rates, and also has a better satisfaction as we get older. So balancing these, there are some situations where actually we might be careful about increasing retirement age, especially when the job is very demanding and where there is a lot of stress. But some people would tell you, you try to improve the stressful situation at work. And also some jobs are not helpful to cognition, jobs that are obviously low stimulation. The benefits on the opposite side is that stimulating jobs actually help us and protect us against, for example, dementia. And the key, I go back to my key message, is that it's not how long we work, but how we work and the quality of our environment where we work in. Some recommendations from a mental health point of view: flexible retirement options, mental health support throughout, and consider planning, obviously, beforehand, and workplace adaptations, especially flexible hours and training opportunity, lifelong learning, and adaptations to new environments at work. Basically, that's it from my side, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barbara. Okay, so now we move on to our fourth round of interventions, okay, this time by social partners and association representatives. Once again, final reminder before we enter the fourth round, okay, that we've got 3 minutes, okay? After about 2.5, I will come and give you a reminder to start winding up. All right, so for our first contribution, we look towards Mr. Josef Vella, the CEO of the UHM. Mr. Vella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the invitation. And on part of MEA. The question is how are we going to adapt to these labor market challenge with an aging population? We are focusing most of the time on how we can exploit more the aging population, and there are various ways. Some of them were mentioned here. Maybe an aspect which was not mentioned so much is the voluntary work that can be done by the elderly people. So people need to change. Most of the time they do not want to stay and remain in the same job, and they are very happy to contribute in another different manner to society. And let us not underrate the aspect of voluntary work in society. So here maybe we can go back some years' time. In Malta we had an approach towards community development, a profession which is used widely in the UK. Unfortunately, we didn't exploit that, and I think we have to revisit that model, because the future will be using elderly people to help themselves within the community. But if we need to adapt to these changes, we need also to focus on 2 other aspects. I mean, at least these are my thoughts about it. First of all, it's the birth rate. We have to start speaking about a strategic demographic policy. As things stand today, we have a birth rate of 0.96%, which definitely is one of the lowest, and that is a challenge. Now, how are we going to develop a policy to help our families, our couples, to go for it, to build the new families of tomorrow? So there we need to retain the youth that we have here, and we need also to attract also the youths.
30 seconds.
With this of another aspect in policy making is productivity. Today we have a productivity, if we calculate it from a labor point of view, it's about €26 an hour. But if you take productivity from a total factor productivity, we are around about 4.6, which puts us in a very difficult situation. When you are under the 4-level score, things are very straightforward. You can almost copy other people's good practices, but here the challenges are bigger now. But these are basically my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vella. Okay, and up next we've got Mr. William Portelli, who is president of the MUBE. Mr. Portelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the invite. I think it's time to act. Mentality of our society needs to effectively change on how retirement is perceived and planned for, to a level that will be reflective of an innovative approach to our labor market.
our schools, our education system can teach generations and how we can maintain the process of transformation, which should be supported by the environment from where it all starts, home. It's about education. With full open collaboration between stakeholders, some measures can be implemented on a national scale in phases, potentially becoming a national policy. Flexible working arrangements, part-time remote work and reduced hours, options for remote work whilst encouraging flexible hours to the older worker are on offer most of the time now, especially post-COVID, which obviously have got going as well. Job design, adjust job roles to better match the physical and mental capacity of the older category of employees with the option of a scheme that can facilitate job sharing arrangements to allow older employees to share responsibilities while maintaining work-life balance. Targeting training programs, digital literacy courses within the AI era provide training in digital skills in anticipation of digital transformation changes to help older workers keep up with technology. Training programs implemented ongoing training and short-term upskilling by offering workshops focused on the skills that are immediately applicable to help the older worker to adapt quickly and to stay relevant in rapidly changing industries. Mentorship opportunities, create mentorship programs where older employees can share their experience while also learning from younger colleagues and how they keep themselves active. Health and well-being initiatives, wellness and health programs promote health initiatives that focus on physical and mental well-being, reducing absenteeism and maintain consistent productivity. Arrange regular health screening checks to ensure workers are fit. Provide mental health support and stress management programs to help older workers to cope with change and demand. Ergonomic workplaces, new working environments, adapt workplaces to be more ergonomic, promoting a great working environment and ensure that they meet the needs of older workers. Retirement planning transitions, phased retirement options allow employees to gradually reduce their hours while maintaining benefits, encouraging a smoother transition to retirement. This can be made by offering this can be promote inclusive hiring practices, age diversity recruitment, encourages age diversity in hiring practices, actively seeking older applicants and valuing their experience whilst maintaining a balanced workforce. Launch campaigns aimed at hiring older workers, highlighting the value of their experience and skills.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much, Mr. Portelli. Sorry, Mr. Portelli. Thank you. All right, so now moving on to Ms. Marta Portelli, the CEO of the Malta Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Portelli.
Three key words, sustainability, adequacy, and adaptability. The reality is that there is no denying that Malta is facing a massive democratic challenge due to the combination of expanding cohorts of older workers quitting the labour market and significantly fewer young people joining the workforce. Therefore, we must definitely encourage talented individuals who are pension eligible to continue working and, more importantly, ensure that Malta's pension system is pragmatic, sustainable and forward-looking. So irrespective of whether we look at it from the social angle or from the economic angle, the message is one. We need to change course to ensure the sustainability of pensions, the adequacy of pensions and adaptability by changing current policies and advocating for policies where we need to do more with less. The latter will also serve us to address the issue of productivity and how to move towards a high value-added economy versus our current very labour-intensive based economy. Why pensions need to be sustainable is obvious, and I would like to remind ourselves that discussion started 20 years ago and we are not there yet. Why pensions need to be adequate is obvious as well. A considerable amount of people feel that they are poor once they start depending on their pension. Whereas salaries have been rising for many years, the cap on pensionable income has remained practically unchanged, and therefore we believe that it is high time to update the cap on pensionable income as well. The reason why we need to do more with less is obvious as well, apart from the fact that as per current scenarios, the employee pool is diminishing. There is also the other factor that our labor-intensive economy is bursting infrastructure at the seams, and all this affects our well-being negatively. What struck a chord in my mind is NSO's presentation, which highlighted the very low percentage of employees between the ages of 55 and 64 within the high value-added remit. This is a very clear message to us that we need to definitely invest more in upskilling and reskilling. Just to mention a few other proposals. First of all, the statutory pension, employees who are entitled to a statutory pension, a quicker switch to them being tax exempt would definitely have a pronounced effect on encouraging their employment after retirement. We also need to address those who retire early from full-time employment to work part-time, even when they're still eligible to a pension before retirement age and have actually taken it.
Can we start winding up, please?
And obviously these are prohibited from working, and we need to tackle that. And last but not least is supplementary pensions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to Mr. Paul Abela, who is the president of the Malta Chamber of SMEs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, for inviting me this morning. Today's subject, I think I am a living example. I am 73 years old, leading my organization for the last 20 years, and leading some small companies as well. I speak on behalf of small businesses and self-employed. Small business, they have a big challenge for transition, and self-employed, they don't really think of retirement when you are a self-employed. But small businesses are adapting to pass their business to the second generation. Even they are engaging directors from outside the family, so they keep their business, because there is a lot of businesses that are being lost, that there is no inheritance. To extend pension age. This is something which we have to consider. And I think this is a message that aging self-employed can continue to contribute. And my advice to all self-employed and small business, they keep on working, they keep on their business. What my advice is to lessen the exposure, the risks, and they will continue to contribute to our economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abela. Okay, and for our final intervention, please, we'd like to turn to Mr. Chris Attard, the General Secretary of Forum.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I think today we face a situation where many workers, for various reasons, still wish to remain active in the labor market. For some, the rising cost of living makes it difficult to maintain a decent quality of life solely on their pension, necessitating additional sources of income. Others simply feel that they still have more to offer and aren't ready to step into retirement. When speaking with management, they often tell us that challenges lies in finding skilled or professional employees, entertaining retired workers not a matter of choice, but of necessity. However, under the current system, employees beyond the retirement age face significant challenges in continuing their employment. In the public sector, for instance, those who wish to remain beyond retirement or pensionable age must often navigate a lengthy approval process or transition from being employees to service providers. At an age where stability should be assured, they are required to obtain a VAT number, invoice their services by the hour, and forfeit benefits available to their colleagues, such as medical insurance, bonuses, vacation, and sick leave, despite performing work of equal value as their colleagues doing the same work. This raises an important question: how can we expect to keep workers employed beyond 65 under such conditions? If we truly want to support these individuals and tap into their valuable experience, we must rethink our approach. I often hear from union members who are willing to continue contributing after retirement but are seeking more flexible work arrangements, such as reduced hours or different